So a couple years ago, I covered the Adult Swim Yule log, which is basically a full-length horror movie disguised as a Yule log video. This year, they made a sequel called Adult Swim Yule Log 2 Branching Out. So yeah, I feel like I need to cover it because I was pretty hyped on the first Adult Swim Yule log. I mean, just looking back at the way that was marketed, which was basically no marketing, just kind of hiding it, releasing it secretly. I mean, that was a really just cool thing that a lot of filmmakers aren't like brave enough to do. It is though a very Adult Swim thing to do. And like Casper Kelly, the guy who made the first film and this one, he's the guy behind Too Many Cooks.
Too many cooks, too many cooks.
And I think a few other of those Adult Swim paid programming things. So yeah, it falls right in line with that. If you've seen those, I mean, you kind of know what you're getting into with this. It is very Adult Swim. I actually think because of that, like, these movies are kind of like doomed to be only ever cult classics. They're not mainstream. They're not for everybody. Adult Swim's humor is not for everybody. And yeah, I think this movie had some big shoes to fill. They could have taken several directions with the whole like Yule log framing device. They could have kept that going and made a completely unconnected story. Luckily they didn't, but they could have like kind of forced the Yule log thing into continuing this story. I think wisely they chose to just completely change it up, and they took a very different approach this time around. They chose to do it like a kind of a parody of Hallmark movies. We are still following Zoe, the main character from the first one. She survived the end of the first one, and she carries an axe around with her everywhere, including work. And her friend insists that they go to Mexico for Christmas. They end up breaking down in a town called Mistletoe, which turns out to be like this weird Hallmark movie dimension. And also the Yule log is stalking them. This one's definitely more of a comedy than a horror movie. The first one had plenty of comedy, but I would say still in that one there was a lot more actual horror. This one goes way more into just like a campy comedy horror. It's a very like meta experience. If you like to bag on Hallmark movies, this is definitely the movie for you. That's been done before. There's another movie called Letters to Satan Claus, which does this. I like that movie a lot. So if you know of that movie and are a fan of it, maybe this is up your alley. I think they pull off a lot of great gags using the like Hallmark gimmick. Randomly Hallmark tropes will pop up.
At least Savannah left you this store as a legacy.
A big corporate Christmas ornament store just opened up downtown. They're taking all our customers.
One of the big highlights of the movie for me was the mom of the Hallmark family. She's like the stereotypical like sassy old lady in Hallmark movies. There are a lot of just like random scenes that are almost like, and it's intentional, but they're like almost disconnected from the movie, like a talking head almost kind of shot of her just like dropping one-liners. That was a huge highlight of the movie for me.
And I thought the hunks were clumsy. These women from the big city are worse.
It made me instantly think of the mom from Birdemic, if you've ever seen that. And another great way they use the Hallmark thing is just kind of like with Zoe, because like from the first one, there's a big focus on like how traumatized she is, almost to a point where she can't function. And in this one, they kind of portray that by going in and out of like a Hallmark tone and a horror movie tone with the lighting and aspect ratio. She'll be going through a scene and something will happen and the lighting and aspect ratio will change. That shit was done like really well. And as always with horror movies, especially for me, we gotta talk about the effects. There are some great practical effects in the movie, all mainly towards the end. And there is a lot of CGI too. I think just like with a movie about a flying killer log, CGI is kind of like a necessity. And like, you know, as a big practical effects guy, it didn't really bother me. So I doubt that's going to be a big problem for a lot of people. But yeah, all through the movie, you get some like fun, like slasher movie kills. And the big payoff is in like the third act. I won't spoil it, but yeah, you get like a really sweet practical effects like scene, and then from there it like takes off. I think the effects in this movie and the first one are good examples of like extremely low budget effects being done right. Because like, I don't know, when I say good effects, I mean they're not like Hollywood production value effects. They're very low budget indie kind of DIY effects. Not to take anything away from the effects artist, I'm just saying like he's working with a limited budget and he has to get creative, and I think he does a very good job at that. There are a couple of effects in the movie that just like really impressed me and how like kind of simple they were, but I think took a lot of thought and were pulled off really well. So big points for that one. And I think if you're there for like the horror and you make it to that third act, it's enough to round out the whole experience, and I think you'll have a lot of fun. That being said though, I do think it's a little long in the tooth for people who are there for that. And I also think that this movie might not even be for a lot of the people who liked the first one. I do kind of think, going back to what I was saying earlier with like, just like, you have to like Adult Swim, which is very, I mean, a lot of people do, but a lot of people don't too. You've also got to like horror movies, like especially these cheap, campier kind of horror movies. And you have to like Hallmark movies, or bagging on Hallmark movies anyway. And so with those three like niche things you need, I do think it's going to be a very specific audience. I happen to be like the demographic for this movie. So, I mean, it all hits for me, but I know it won't hit for everybody, even like more so than the first one. And yeah, I mean, that being said, I think a lot of the like flaws you could take from the movie, like that, the Hallmark stuff being more so at the forefront than the horror and stuff. I mean, I think that like that's gonna make this movie like super divisive, but I think it was all done very well. They nailed the Hallmark tropes, they had the effects, the comedy hit, and I think it's a really fun watch. It is like infinitely more Christmassy than the first one too. I was actually talking to a friend and he pointed out that there's like actually no Christmas in the first one. Like, you've got the Yule log, but like you could film a Yule log year round. There were no Christmas trees, no mention of Christmas. No, they weren't even dressed really for winter. So yeah, like as much as I would probably still count it as a Christmas movie, it could also very easily work outside of Christmas just as well. This one though is like full Christmas. The main setting is an ornament store in like a small Hallmark town that's like decked out to the nines with like trees and lights and shit. And so yeah, this is like a must watch for anybody who is into all the things. I would probably give it a 3 stars. I'm not sure what I rated the first one. I probably could have looked back and checked that before I made this video, but I'm pretty sure I gave it a 4 stars, mainly just driven by the way it was released. I do, as of now, like it better than the sequel, but I think the sequel is really good and will probably grow on me as time goes. But yeah, for now, it's like a 3 star. And you know, if you're curious, I would definitely check it out, even if you're not sure if you're into those things, because yeah, it's a fun watch. And I hope it keeps going. I would watch one of these every year or every other year, whatever. I'm down. So yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time.